Let's review one of the fights from the legendary film Seven Samurai. Hi folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria, and I teach people how to sword fight. I run this YouTube channel talking about military history. I deal in antique swords, and this is part of my movie fight review series. I've got lots more videos like this. If you haven't checked them out, do check that playlist out right now. So today we're going to be looking at 1954's Seven Samurai, just one of the fights. There's many fights in that movie. If you haven't seen it, it's one of Akira Kurosawa's masterpieces. Amazing director, but this is an amazing film, and of course inspired The Magnificent Seven, and inspired lots of other things as well. His other film, Hidden Fortress, in case you didn't know, inspired Star Wars. So here we've got a short fight. So this is going to be, yes, that's right, like for me, a short video. So this is a fight between let's call them a villager and one of the eponymous Seven Samurai, okay, whose name I'm actually not sure of. Get posting down below if you know this particular samurai's name. I tried to have a quick look and I couldn't find the answer quickly. Anyway, fundamentally, this guy is being a braggart, and he's saying, you know, well, I could beat you in a sword fight, and the other guy's going, yeah, well, whatever, but, you know, let's have a go at it with sticks. So they use bamboo poles rather than bokken. Bokken are the wooden training swords that you usually use to practice instead of actually using a real sword. So let's see what happens, and let's unpack this fight. Just so you know, my background is in European swordsmanship fundamentally, although I have studied some Asian martial arts. I do deal in antique swords, including Japanese swords, and I certainly have friends who train in the world of kenjutsu as well. So I have some insight into this, but I am by no means an expert on Japanese swordsmanship. So I'm going to be reviewing this from the point of view of a HEMA person, historical European martial arts, and adding into that what I do know about Japanese swordsmanship and swords. So let's get to it. So they're going to do this with bamboo sticks, perfectly fine. A lot of people might think, why aren't they using bokken? And bokken are the sort of official training tool, I guess, of Japanese swordsmanship. Usually hardwood, usually red oaks, white oak, various other types of hardwood. Kind of pretend katana, or tachi, if you're talking about an earlier period, incidentally. So in this period, kind of interesting, this is set in the 16th century. So they would be using katana, but tachi would also be around. And at this date, it's more defined by whether it's worn edge up or edge down. If it's worn edge up through a sash or obi, then it's a katana. If it's worn by slings, edge down, then you regard it as a tachi. The only other thing, little interesting thing, the nakaga or tang has the signature on each side, depending on whether it was meant to be a tachi blade or a katana blade. Anyway, let's get to the fight here. So they start off with a fairly... now there's an interesting continuity thing there. So he switches. Notice, if I just go back a bit to this scene, you can see that they're standing with their sticks towards each other. In European swordsmanship, this would be roughly equivalent to posta breve, if we're talking about Italian longsword. Perhaps long point, langort, something like that in German systems. Very typical guard position, used a lot in modern kendo. However, not necessarily as dominant in kenjutsu as it is in kendo for the rules and protective gear that they wear. Reasons I won't go into depth in this video at all, because this is supposed to be a short video. So, but you'll notice in this next scene, there we go, he changes to a guard with the sword down by the side. Now this is a guard position which is actually used a lot in traditional kenjutsu. It's barely used, I think never used, in kendo, because kendo is much narrower and has very specific rules about what strikes score points and things like this. So a lot of things have been abandoned in modern kendo, but if you look at traditional kenjutsu, the original swordsmanship of Japan, then this guard position is quite common, in fact, and we find it in European sources as well. So if this was in Italian, well, Fiore di Liberi's longsword, which is what I teach, then that would be posta coda longa distesa, which is the long and extended tail position. And they have equivalent positions in German traditions like Meyer and Talhofer and things like this. Right, so he's now in a guard position. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, His sword is now pointing away from the opponent, but it's loaded. It's loaded and ready to move forwards. So in many ways, when you start with your weapon forwards, in order to cut, for example, you've got to bring the weapon back before you move it forwards again. Okay, in sabre, for example, in sabre fencing, which I also teach, we would do that with a moulinet, a turn around the wrist, because it's a one-handed sword. With this type of sword, two-handed sword, when you're holding it, if you've got it held back here, either up or down, then it's ready to strike forward with one simple motion. If it's pointed towards the opponent, it's ready to thrust, it's not really ready to cut. So actually, this is now a loaded and ready to cut position. Some people also might regard this as a slightly more reactive guard rather than an aggressive guard, but that's adaptable to how you use it as well. Anyway, let's go on with the fight. So the other guy has got his sword above his head up here, which is a guard that they sometimes use in modern kendo, and again it's very common in traditional kenjutsu. Let's just go back and look at that guy. We go back here, there we go. So the sword above his head, very, very common, and equally it's found in European longsword. There are huge numbers of parallels between medieval and Renaissance longsword, a two-handed sword, and Japanese two-handed sword, or indeed Korean, Chinese, and various others, probably Indian as well. So anywhere that used two-handed swords has a lot of very similar guard positions. Not to say that everything's the same, there are some big differences as well. But this position above the head, is that Jodan? I can't remember the Japanese name for that. But if that was in Filippo Vardi's treatise, for example, that would be called Posti di Falcone. If that was in a German treatise, that would be called Vom Tag, or from the roof. So descriptive terms. This is seen as a more aggressive guard. When the sword's held down, it's usually seen as a more reactive guard, but it doesn't always work like that. Right. Right, okay. So, if you look at the position there, so this is one issue I have with this fight. I love this movie. I love the swordsmanship in it. I love everything about it. I love the camera work. I just love it, okay? It's a great movie. So please don't take this as me as bad-mouthing Akira Kurosawa or the Kenjutsu masters that instructed them or anything else. But what he does here, our samurai, is not the same as what he does with steel swords. We're going to see in a minute. Notice, he didn't move offline. He shuffled backwards a little bit and simply cut downwards. Well, he started in a low position and he cut around. So moves in the semicircle. So they hit each other, okay? So I'm actually in full agreement with villager guy, unnamed guy, I don't know his name, the rash guy who wants to have a fight, okay? Not the samurai, or Ronin, as he probably is, okay? The fact is they hit each other, and that is because our samurai hero didn't sidestep or traverse, step offline. He didn't do that. So let's just look at that again, go back a bit. He charges in, bam. They just hit each other on the shoulder. Okay, if this was a competition or real life, that's what we call a double. That is both people chopped each other on the collarbone, okay? Now, I do like, there are many things I like about this, the fact that they use control. So they didn't break each other's collarbones, they didn't aim at the head. This is clearly a training exercise with some ego and testosterone thrown in, but they aren't actually injuring each other. So this is how most people historically trained, because most people historically didn't have lots of padded sparring gear and fencing masks and stuff like this. Most people training longsword or katana or whatever, probably, well, certainly trained with blunt weapons most of the time, very often trained with wooden weapons or bamboo in this case, and you know, this is a very, very common way of training. Right, so now we see what happens next. So he's correct, okay? We're supposed to think, oh, well, the other guy's such an expert, he must be right. No, he's right. This is a draw. They hit each other. Anyway, the other guy goes, he didn't win. He did not win. They both hit each other. That was a double. That was a draw. I agree with Mustachio guy here. Right, so let's see what happens next. No, they would both be dead. We could see the bamboo sticks, they hit each other. If these were sharp steel swords, they still would have hit each other. There is no physical difference between what would have happened with a steel sword or a bamboo sword, okay? You will see when we go to the steel version, he does something really importantly different. Let's have a look. I think we can fast forward a bit past the talking. There we go. So I do like, I kind of like what this represents from a storytelling point of view, because the samurai is, you know, he's wise and he's older and more experienced. He's not in the heat of the moment. He's like, look, dude, there's nothing to be gained from this. You're gonna die, and it turns out, you know, he is gonna die. Just leave it. So I like that. I like the storytelling part of it, but the swordsmanship, unfortunately, doesn't marry up with the story in this case. Right, let's go forward. So unfortunately, the villager guy just keeps pushing it, keeps challenging. There we go. And he pulls his sword out. This isn't a contest of words. This is a contest of swords. So, oh right, hold on, gone too far forward. Right, let's go back a bit now. Right. Okay, so they're now standing in guard with both their blades towards each other. So they are repeating what happened in the first mock fight with sticks. Good. There's also, we will see, look, if you watch here. Right, let's stop for a second. Right. They didn't show it very clearly, but the other guy does move to a low down guard. Okay, so they did repeat that as well, but it wasn't very clear here. Anyway, let's go back. Also, so essentially they start off in the same way. They start with their points forward. Then our samurai guy lowers his sword down and the other guy raises his sword above his head. So they're repeating what happened before that we already talked about. Great. And then the guy with the sword above his head charges forward in quite a kendo way, I have to say. Actually, I think he's leading with the right foot. Oh, he's leading with the left foot. Now that's actually really, really interesting. So usually when you've got a right hand lead on a weapon, if you're cutting downwards or from the right, you'll tend to finish with the right foot forward, which means you have to start with the left foot forward. So that's kind of interesting. In kendo, you keep which is obviously a sportified modern version of kenjutsu, you keep the right foot forward all the time. Anyway, so he charges in. Boom. Right. So this is the major thing. Look at him now. Look at him there. He sidestepped. This is why this technique works. It's nothing to do with the swords. There was no contact of the swords. All he did was traverse. And this is a completely basic, simple technique that we get beginners doing in longsword classes, like week in, week out in HEMA classes, whether it's my club or anyone else's club. Sidestep and countercut. That's all it is, okay? And it's great. I've got no criticism against this. My criticism is that what he does here is not what he did in the first mock fight with sticks. He does a different technique. In the first one, it was a draw. The other guy was right. In the first one, they both died, or they both were grievously injured at least. In this, it's a completely different scenario. He sidesteps, countercuts, the other guy keeps going in a straight line, he moves offline, smack. Anyone who's done, anything basically, Aikido, Jiu-Jitsu, Karate, Kung Fu, probably boxing to some extent, all types of European fencing, will know if you step offline, it opens up new angles and means that you're now moving out of the way of the opponent's sword, and you can hit them usually in the arms, but you can go for the head if you go deeper as well. So this is a fine technique, but my problem with this scene is it's not what he did in the first fight. The other guy was right. It was a double hit in the first fight. Let's just go back a little bit. You can just see this again from the beginning. Boom. And he's like, I told you so. I love it. So it's really, really good. I want to see it again. I absolutely love it because it is a really good, simple technique. Smack. But it's not what was advertised at the beginning. So there we go. I'm going to wrap up the fight there. We don't really see much after that. But it is a lovely, lovely scene. It's a lovely bit of storytelling. But it's always bugged me, this particular duel, from a fencing and from a swordsmanship point of view, for the reasons mentioned here. Okay, great final technique, but it's not what he did in the first fight. And sadly, the other guy was right. He just shouldn't have pushed it. He shouldn't have pushed and pushed and pushed to have a fight with someone who was a better swordsman than him. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. I've got many, many more and many longer of these movie fight reviews and analyses in my playlist, so check those out if you haven't done already. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please, it makes a huge difference to me and the number of people that get to see these videos, which motivates me to make more videos like these. If you've got other suggestions of other movie fights you'd like me to do, get posting down below. If you think that I'm full of crap, then tell me as well, because I'm interested to know what you think I said was wrong. If you know the Japanese names of some of these guard positions, also remind me of those down there. Thanks a lot for watching. I have been Matt Easton. I will of course be again next time, and I hope I'll see you back on the channel really soon. Cheers folks. Thanks for watching. We've got extra videos on Patreon. Please give our Facebook a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers folks.